Nintendo 64. Launched in 1996, the Nintendo 64 is one of the most beloved consoles of the late 90s, and what's even more impressive is how some of them are still running great nearly 3 decades later. Built like a tank, the N64 was famous for its rugged design, chunky cartridges, and iconic library of games like Super Mario 64, Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, and GoldenEye 007. Unlike disc-based consoles that suffer from scratching and laser failure, the N64's cartridge format makes it far less prone to long-term damage. You can pull one out of a closet today, blow the dust out of a game, and be playing within seconds. The controller may not have aged as gracefully. Those analog sticks are notorious for wearing down, but replacements and third-party options are easy to find. Even the original power bricks tend to hold up, and most N64 systems will still work on modern TVs with the right AV or HDMI adapters. What makes the N64's longevity even more remarkable is the sheer nostalgia it carries. For many, it's a system that defined couch multiplayer, with Mario Kart 64 and Smash Bros. Still capable of sparking hours of fun today. In 2025, an N64 in working condition isn't just rare, it's a blast from the past. PlayStation 2. Released in 2000, the PlayStation 2 is the best-selling console of all time. It's also one of the most durable. Over 155 million units were sold worldwide, and thanks to Sony's robust hardware design, a surprising number of them are still running flawlessly in 2025. The PS2's disk drive was one of its more vulnerable components, but even after decades of use, many still read original DVDs and CDs without issue. And if the drive does fail, there are easy workarounds, from laser replacements to booting games via memory card exploits. PS2's library is a massive reason for its longevity. With over 3,800 titles, from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas to Shadow of the Colossus, it's a console that still feels fresh because so many games never got modern ports. Plus, it's backwards compatible with PS1 titles, making it a 2-in-1 retro machine. Hooking it up today is surprisingly simple. The original composite cables work on older TVs, and for modern setups, HDMI adapters are widely available and cheap. Many gamers also use upscalers to make classics look sharper on 4K screens. Whether you're revisiting your childhood favorites or diving into its library for the first time, a working PS2 in 2025 is proof that some consoles truly were built to last. Sega Genesis. Launched in 1988 in Japan as the Mega Drive and 1989 in North America, the Sega Genesis still stands as one of the most iconic 16-bit consoles, and remarkably, thousands of original units are still fully functional in 2025. Built with a sturdy, straightforward design and fewer moving parts than disc-based systems, the Genesis has aged incredibly well. Many consoles have been sitting in closets for decades, only to be plugged in and power on without a hitch. The Genesis library is another reason it continues to thrive. With legendary titles like Sonic the Hedgehog, Streets of Rage 2, Golden Axe, and Gunstar Heroes, its catalog is packed with games that remain fun and challenging today. And because it uses cartridges instead of discs, the wear and tear factor is minimal, similar to the N64. Playing a Genesis in 2025 is easier than ever. Original models still connect to CRT televisions, and with inexpensive HDMI mods or adapters, you can run them on modern TVs without losing that nostalgic pixel look. Plus, Sega fans still gather at retro conventions and online communities to trade games, swap hardware, and keep the system's spirit alive. The Genesis has shown that it's still thriving in living rooms worldwide. Nintendo Wii. When the Nintendo Wii launched in 2006, it completely redefined gaming with its motion controls, approachable design, and massive appeal across all age groups. Almost 2 decades later, it's one of the easiest retro consoles to still enjoy in 2025, and not just because of nostalgia. The Wii's hardware has proven incredibly durable. Its disk drives have aged relatively well, and the compact design means fewer mechanical failures. Even better, the Wii is backward compatible with GameCube games and controllers, expanding its library instantly. In 2025, the Wii still has an active following. Many titles, like Wii Sports, Mario Kart Wii, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess, remain just as entertaining as when they launched. And because of its popularity, secondhand Wiis are cheap and easy to find, often bundled with a stack of games. Another bonus, the Wii's homebrew screen is still alive, allowing players to load games from SD cards, run fan projects, and even emulate older systems, all without heavily modifying the hardware. Whether you're using it for official classics or modern mods, the Wii is still one of the most practical and fun retro systems to play today. What retro console do you still own today? Let me know down in the comments. PlayStation. When Sony entered the gaming scene in 1994 with the original PlayStation, it completely reshaped the industry. Known for ushering in the era of 3D gaming, the PS1 became home to some of the most iconic titles ever: Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, Gran Turismo, and Crash Bandicoot. It was built like a tank for a disc-based system, and that's a big reason so many units are still running in 2025. Unlike later consoles with more complex moving parts, the original PlayStation's design was straightforward, making repairs relatively simple. The disk drive was its most vulnerable component, but even that can often be revived with a lens cleaning or cheap replacement part. Controllers, memory cards, and AV cables are still easy to find thanks to the massive number of units sold, over 100 million worldwide. Collectors today can still pop in an original disc, plug the PS1 into a modern TV with an inexpensive HDMI adapter, and experience games exactly as they were in the 90s, polygon edges, load screens, and all. Its legacy also makes it worth keeping alive. Few consoles can claim to have transformed gaming culture as completely. In many ways, the PlayStation has proved it will be around for years to come. Nintendo GameCube. Launched in 2001, the Nintendo GameCube may not have won its generation's sales race, but in 2025, it's one of the most beloved and surprisingly functional retro consoles you can still enjoy. Known for its distinctive cube shape, sturdy build, and signature handle, the GameCube has aged remarkably well, with many original units still working flawlessly today. Its optical mini discs were once criticized for limited storage compared to DVDs, but they've proven surprisingly resilient over time. The GameCube's library is stacked with classics: Super Smash Bros. Melee, The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, Metroid Prime, and Mario Kart Double Dash, many of which never saw proper remasters, making the original hardware the best way to experience them in authentic form. Controllers are another big plus. The iconic GameCube controller is still used competitively for Smash Bros. Tournaments today, and new replicas are still being manufactured. Even if you can't find one in the wild, replacement parts and third-party options are easy to get. Thanks to its compact size, durable design, and a library that's pure nostalgia gold, the GameCube remains one of the easiest and most rewarding retro consoles to fire up in 2025. For many gamers, it's still the perfect example of Nintendo doing things its own way and nailing it. Sega Dreamcast. Released in 1999, the Sega Dreamcast was ahead of its time in almost every way, and that forward-thinking design is exactly why it's still surprisingly easy to play in 2025. This was the first console with a built-in modem for online play, introducing features we now take for granted. Even though Sega bowed out of the console race soon after, the Dreamcast left behind a loyal fanbase and hardware that's aged remarkably well. One of the Dreamcast's biggest advantages for modern players is its disc format. Unlike cartridge-based systems that rely on aging pins, Dreamcast GD-ROMs generally hold up well, meaning many original discs still work decades later. The library is a mix of cult classics like Jet Set Radio and Crazy Taxi, along with arcade-perfect fighters such as Soul Calibur and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Even more impressive, the Dreamcast scene is still alive. Some developers continue to release new games, and fan servers have revived online play for titles like Phantasy Star Online. HDMI adapters also make it simple to connect the console to modern TVs without sacrificing picture quality. For a console that technically failed commercially, the Dreamcast's lasting appeal in 2025 is proof that innovation, great games, and passionate fans can keep a system alive long after its official end. SNES. Over 3 decades after its 1991 North American debut, the Super Nintendo is still delighting players in 2025, and not just in the nostalgic sense. Thanks to its rock-solid hardware design, many original SNES units still power on without a hitch, even after years in storage. Nintendo's use of high-quality components means these consoles are far less prone to the failures or disk drive issues that plague later generations. Cartridge-based media also plays a big role in its longevity. Unlike CDs or DVDs that can scratch or degrade, SNES cartridges, when kept clean, tend to work exactly as they did on day one. With a quick dust-off of the contacts, most will boot right up. And because the SNES outputs through standard AV cables, hooking it up to modern TVs is surprisingly simple with the help of affordable adapters or upscalers. For players who want an even cleaner setup, third-party companies still make brand new controllers, replacement shells, and HDMI mods for the system, meaning you can give your SNES a modern facelift without sacrificing authenticity. From Super Mario World to Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, its library holds up brilliantly, making it one of the easiest and most rewarding retro consoles to enjoy in 2025. Atari 2600. When the Atari 2600 launched in 1977, it changed gaming forever by introducing interchangeable cartridges and bringing arcade-style fun into living rooms. And here's the crazy part. Almost 50 years later, these wood-paneled consoles are still running to many people's surprise. The hardware was built with simplicity and durability in mind. There are no fragile optical drives, no overheating GPUs, just a straightforward circuit board and solid-state cartridges. This means fewer parts to fail and far less risk of complete breakdown over time. For modern players, keeping an Atari 2600 alive is surprisingly doable. Replacement joysticks, power supplies, and RF adapters are easy to find online. Plus, because the system's design is so simple, repairs can be done with basic soldering skills. The cartridges themselves are equally resilient. Most still load instantly after decades in storage. Best of all, if you don't have a vintage CRT, There are HDMI adapters that let you hook a 2600 up to a modern TV. The blocky visuals of games like Pitfall, Adventure, and Space Invaders may look primitive today, but there's something timeless about them. The fact that a console released during the Carter administration can still deliver a fun afternoon in 2025 is nothing short of legendary. Game Boy. When Nintendo's Game Boy hit shelves in 1989, it was groundbreaking. Compact, tough, and running on 4 AA batteries for up to 15 hours, it quickly became the go-to portable for an entire generation. What's wild is that many original Game Boys are still fully functional in 2025, over 3 decades later. The reason? Nintendo's engineering focused on durability over flash. The monochrome LCD screen may seem primitive by today's standards, but it's not prone to burnout like modern OLED panels, and the hardware has no moving parts to wear out. One famous example is the Gulf War Game Boy, which was on display at Nintendo's New York store up until late 2023, which survived the bombing and still plays Tetris. For collectors and players today, keeping one running is easy. Replacement screens, buttons, and battery covers are widely available, and there's an active modding community producing backlit displays and rechargeable battery packs. And yes, you can still play it on the go. Original cartridges are surprisingly resilient, and with inexpensive adapters, you can even hook a Game Boy to a modern TV or play its library on newer handhelds without emulation. It's a perfect reminder that sometimes the simplest tech lasts the longest. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe below. Thanks for watching.